So there I was, 6 a.m. I'm hanging out with Finn doing 7-month-old toddler things like, I don't know, stacking blocks and
I don't think
clapping our hands.
He's not exactly a toddler. He's still just
true.
a baby.
He's a baby. He's an infant.
Yes.
An infant.
Go
so
on.
there it was, 6 a.m. I'm holding it down with Finn. Wes walks into the room. He's just woken up. He says, I got a popsicle. And he, at 6 a.m., had woken up out of his bed, went into the kitchen, opened up the freezer, got the popsicle box, got a popsicle out of the popsicle box, took the wrapper off.
That's next level.
Impressive.
That's the first time he's ever taken the wrapper off himself.
And walks in and says, I got a popsicle. And I say, no, we don't eat popsicles for breakfast. Oh Wes,
dear.
no, let's put it back. And then
But he was so
flipped
proud
out.
of himself.
He was so proud of himself.
For getting a popsicle and opening it up by himself. But it was popsicle, and we don't eat popsicles for breakfast.
Right. Gotta start the day off right with some, with some sugary blueberries. No. Some butter toast. Yeah, I mean, could we have let the popsicle slide? Maybe. But the real trick, the real thing that gets us is ARIEL, not 30 seconds before, had said, sure, Wes, you can have a popsicle. Because he
really
went to
proud of
ARIEL first.
I was really proud of him, and he
You
was like,
check
look
with
what I
mommy.
did. And I was like, cool, bud. Okay, and there was never a point when I actually said, yes, you can eat that popsicle.
Oh, is that right?
I just never was like,
He could see it in your eyes.
he could probably see it in my eyes.
You're excited for him.
I was more like, Wes, you did a great job opening it up by yourself. Such a big kid. Eating breakfast. But,
fixing your own breakfast. I mean, yeah, I said all that too. But then I said no popsicle.
Yeah,
and he flipped out because I think he thought mommy said yes popsicle. And that's the worst type of confusing.
I didn't say no. So technically in toddler, that means yes.
So we had a little miscommunication there. Which, how can you communicate in 2 separate rooms at 6 a.m.?
I know. But
I thought I was the first on his call list.
No, it was
Turns
me.
out I was second.
It was me.
You gotta walk to mommy first. Anyways, we're talking about baby foods today. We're talking about popsicles for breakfast. We are here with Jenny Best from Solid Starts. Hello, Jenny. Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to Baby Steps.
Is that
Thank
what we're talking
you.
about, Jenny? We're talking about popsicles for breakfast?
Totally popsicles. Blueberry,
Totally
strawberry,
popsicles for breakfast.
mix it. Breast milk pop. We could go to breast milk popsicles. Like a whole thing on that.
That's
Ooh.
actually an excellent idea.
Yeah, you
breast
wanna-
milk popsicles.
Freeze that breast milk.
Well, it's not like it's the first time I've frozen breast milk.
Yeah, but in a shape for a popsicle.
Right, yeah.
That'd be fun. That'd be fun.
But Jenny, we are so excited to have you. So our producer Rachel has been friends with you for
Virtual friends. We met virtually
friends,
in the
fair enough.
pandemic, basically. Yeah.
yes. Yeah. And now you have basically started your own business during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, you were just talking about being on Good Morning America. Things that you're just blowing up. Tell us a little bit about Solid Starts and sort of how you got started.
Yeah. So I'm a mom of 3. At one point, it was 3 under 3. It's like I've got the battle wounds to prove that. And I sort of unintentionally raised a really picky eater. And I'm the chair of the board of the Museum of Food and Drink in New York. I've been in food and farming for the last 20 years of my career. Like, how did I, end up with a child who hates to eat, like literally hates to eat? So, it's kind of a sob story, which I'll spare you of. But, I go to the doctor's office. He's 12 months old. He's really below in weight. He's completely stopped eating at that point. We started spoon feeding him. He, turning his head, pursing his lips, won't have any of that. And I didn't know what to do at the time. This was about 5 years ago. So, I started pulling out my phone and the movies and the music and like dancing and doing the whole thing, like anything just to get him to open his mouth, right? Like the lengths we go to as parents just to get our kids to eat when they're not wanting to eat are, can be kind of ridiculous. And that like started out kind of like crutches, like the iPhone was the crutch to getting him to open his mouth, take the food and all of that. But it just kind of like spiraled down to this really tense experience at the table. He didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be there. I was worried all the time because he was losing weight. By the time we got to our doctor's office, for his one-year checkup, he was losing weight really rapidly. And by the 18-month checkup, he was less than the first percentile in weight. So he was basically starving himself. So, when I got pregnant with the twins, I knew I wanted to start solids in a different way. When we look back at Charlie's story and, what happened? What was it that kind of got us from that point to the other? The dietitians that we work with and the feeding therapists basically traced it all back to a prolonged spoon feeding, prolonged and exclusive spoon feeding. So I was that mom. I was like, my house is not going to get dirty. I'm going to put this tiny bit of a pouch on a spoon and like control the whole thing. And then I'm going to wipe the corners of his mouth like after he has a little bit of puree in there. And you could just see I was like all over him. I was totally controlling the process. And it wasn't fun for him at all. In fact, when he would like go to reach for the spoon, I remember kind of like pushing his hand away because I was terrified and nobody told me how this stuff is supposed to work. So, fast forward a couple of years, I'm pregnant with twins and I'm thinking to myself, like, there's no way I'm going to have 3 picky eaters in my house. Like, I cannot do this. It's too hard. Like, no. So
there's got to be some other way to do this.
Has to be. Yeah. We're all made to eat. Why does it have to be this hard? So I really started researching alternatives to spoon feeding because, we had traced it back to that sort of the cause. And, we found baby-led weaning. I read all the books, did all the research. And the first day of starting solids with the twins was like, their names are Max and 80. They're sitting there and I offered them some like salmon and some fruit, or I can't remember what it is, but they were so happy. They were smashing and grabbing and tasting everything. They were having a great time. And I remember FaceTiming with my mom and I was like, look at this. Like, is it possible it could be this easy? And it was just, for me, it was a complete world change. They've now had more than 400 foods. And it's fun to come to the table. Of course, my older one is still kind of whining and pouting and screaming that it's the worst mango ever that he's tasted. But, that's a different story.
Right. Kids are always going to be picky.
Yeah, we'll have to do a different episode on reversing picky eating because it's a whole different ballgame.
Oh my gosh.
Wait, so you mentioned baby-led weaning. Tell us a little bit about, like at a high level, what is baby-led weaning?
Yeah, so baby-led weaning is just a term for starting solid food with infants, whereby you skip the purees and go straight to finger food. So, but the thing that nobody really tells you about is that by 6 months of age, if your child is sitting and has good head control and can reach and grab things, they're developmentally ready to self-feed. So back in the day, in 1950, when we were starting purees at, wait for it, 4 weeks old. Thank you.
What?
Thank you, Gerber. You needed spoon feeding and purees to be safe,
They
right?
couldn't even hold their head up.
Can't even. You'd have to feed them almost lying down, right? I mean, which is like such a choking hazard, even with a puree. So, it doesn't really make sense anymore, the guidelines that we have today. And, I think that we're just a little bit behind the times in changing our thinking about this. We're still doing what we've been told by, or what our grandparents did or what our parents did, just because it's what they did. There's actually no research or evidence or or developmental reason for starting with purees and spoon feeding. It's just kind of what we've always been done. But if you really think about it, like what in infant health and pediatrics is based on zero evidence? Like what recommendations in that? Like it's completely unique in that way. So I'm hoping to be part of that change. Solid Starts is the platform for where we try to make it easier on the finger food process, because I know a lot of parents are terrified, even with transitioning from spoons to finger food, terrified about choking, terrified about gagging, the whole thing. So, we basically have the world's first food database for babies, and it shows you how to cut and prepare the food for your baby's specific age. And it's got videos of babies different ages eating the food, so you can kind of build your confidence and see, okay, my child's that age too. I think we can do this.
Right.
That sounds awesome.
It is awesome. I use it.
Okay, I need to
and it's free. It's free, and it'll be free forever. When I set out to build Solid Starts, I never thought about like a tech application. Like I don't even use apps. Basically, I mean, I'm just not that kind of person. But I wanted to launch a campaign in the United States to get people interested in rethinking the traditional method of introducing solids. And it ended up being that the thing that people needed the most was the exact details of how to cut food. It wasn't that, Americans weren't interested in alternatives to spoon feeding. In fact, I think a lot of millennial parents really are interested in departing from a lot of the ways our parents raised us. But it was the how-to, the logistics of it. So, when we look at what parents are Googling, for example, we did a deep analysis of this. They're not looking for things like, what is baby led weaning? They're like, when can I introduce eggs? How do I cut chicken? Is an apple, when is apple safe for babies? These very like hyper specific search terms. So we decided, okay, this is a food database in the making.
Yeah. I mean, we have started, we've started Solid Starts. We've basically been doing baby led weaning. We started your program.
Well, I mean, we like with Wes, we started with purees.
Right.
We started with purees at like 4 months. I think we started with, we were making our own with the baby biaba thing.
The blender, the $200 blender.
Yes. I mean, it was very easy. That thing was great. We were like, let's start with carrots. This sounds like a good idea. And so we did that, and it turned out great. Wes mostly eats noodles right now, but he's also 3.
Strong noodle butter game.
Yeah. Wes, what do you want for dinner? Noodles with butter. Okay.
Some things he used to really like, and now he doesn't like at all, like eggs.
Eggs. Oh, I think we used to give him eggs with spinach every morning, and as like a 8-month-old, he would just eat that up. He just like fisting eggs, and I think by the time that he was like maybe 15 months old, he was not interested in eggs anymore.
Yeah,
would
really
not
common.
touch them. And now he's like refuses to eat eggs, and we're like, did we make a mistake here?
Yeah, maybe we made a mistake.
No. It's it's really common. I think it's they've become more aware of the smell of eggs. It's really common for 12-month-olds to start refusing eggs, or 1-year-olds.
Yeah, eggs don't smell great.
Well, he's coming on 3.5 now. Still won't have it. So I don't know. Maybe someday.
I have a little trick for you then.
Go on.
So one thing that can really help is to bring a hard-boiled egg to the table, both peeled, so one that's like ready to eat whole, and one that's in the shell. Don't put it in front of him. Just put it like, within reach, within view, and start tapping it yourself and just start peeling it. And don't even say a thing about it, and see if he reaches for one. You might be like a week into it, he's fussing with the shell, smashing it, it's making a mess, there's no ingestion. Next week, maybe taking a bite of the egg white, and then you can talk to him about the prize inside, which is the gold prize. That usually works with preschoolers.
That's actually very smart. Do you remember that time we were eating an egg, or like making an egg or something, and he was like, "That's a chicken,"
Oh yeah.
Do you remember when he said that?
Oh yeah.
Our
Terrifying.
our nanny is vegan and gluten free, and I thank her every day because she makes vegetables for him, and he like eats vegetables because she makes them so delicious. But we also get these sort of random things from Wes being like, there's a chicken in there, right? And I'm like, that's not technically true.
Here I am
Wes.
trying to explain what.
Let me explain to you.
fertilized
So, like,
versus
a fertilized
unfertilized
egg is this,
eggs.
and a non-fertilized egg. Yeah. There's that. That's
came
just
first,
living in LA.
The chicken or the unfertilized egg? Well,
But so Wes is a very good eater. We took him to Singapore about a year and a half ago. No, about 2 years ago. And I mean, he was eating like Indian food and just loving it. And so I feel like we did good with Wes. But I feel like we're going to do even better with Finn,
I hope
who
so.
is 7 months old now.
That's what
Ariel
second
told
children
me-
are for.
That's right. That's right.
Ariel told me that we could start him just eating his own solids, and I thought to myself, what? He's going to choke on a carrot
Yeah.
or something.
I literally
But he doesn't.
I super steamed carrots. I call it super steaming because they get so soft. And I just set them in front of Finn, and
You mean
he's just like,
overcooked?
yeah, overcooked.
You overcooked the carrots.
Well,
yeah.
but overcooked means
We'll
something.
call it, yes.
Super
Overcooked
steamed.
implies something bad.
Yeah,
they're
these
super
are not
steamed.
overcooked. These are super steamed.
They're super steamed. They have no crunchiness left whatsoever.
That's like next time we have a dinner party where something is like not quite.
It's
right.
like burned.
I think we just need
and
to
I'm
market
like,
it.
it's super cooked.
It's
super
super cooked.
cooked. It's great. Yeah, I did that 2 days ago.
We kind of like super singed our Brussels on Sunday. It was, these are hyper crunchy.
Stop it.
These are
Stop it.
power cooked. Yeah.
But yeah, so I'll just set these carrots in front of Finn, and he's just happy as a clam, just yop, 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 yop. And I have no idea how much food he's actually getting, but I mean, now that I am sort of like tapped into this baby-led weaning situation, I'm like, does it actually matter if he's getting any food? He's like, he's going through this experience of eating, and he's eating at the table with us, and it's just this, it's just this wonderful situation, and so easy. So easy.
Much easier. I love that it breaks apart the notion that parents are expected to make one meal for themselves and another for their baby. I think in a lot of ways, that's where things with convenience baby food, which didn't really exist until about 1930. I think that's where, like with everything in America, we just took it too far.
For sure.
Convenience has its place, and I love me a good yogurt pouch on the way to swim class or whatever it is. But when we think about it, that was sort of the start of, okay, baby's no longer eating the family food. You're no longer modifying family food to make it safe for baby. You're now serving baby this jar or this pouch or whatever. So I love that it's the same meal because it's so much easier on the parent, and whoever the parent is cooking, it's often the mom. So we love it for that reason. But to answer your other question, does it matter if they're eating as much? What's really interesting is that it's actually easy to overfeed a baby when you're spoon feeding. Just because they're not in control of the pace or the exact amount necessarily, right? Sometimes it's happening more quickly than I think babies would feed themselves if they had the spoon or their fingers.
Sure.
And if you watch babies kind of self-feeding versus spoon-feeding, you'll see that the spoon-feeding can be really rapid. It's like the parents scraping the bottom of the jar or the pouch, whatever, like thinking they have to finish this amount because that's what the amount was in the jar. But is that the amount that particular baby needs? Not necessarily. So we love self-feeding and baby-led weaning because the child, those cues are built in. Your baby on day one after birth told you when they were hungry and they looked away when they were full. That, is definitely built in.
If a parent is wondering, how do I even get started? What are some good starter foods?
Yeah. So generally you want to look for something that is naturally soft, super nutritious, and easy for the baby to self-hold, like to self-feed. So we love avocado for that reason. It's, it just sort of mashes between your fingers. It's super high in fat and nutrients. And if you even serve a half or like a quarter of it, the baby can grab it with their fist. 6-month-old babies don't have the sort of finger articulation to pick up small pieces of food. Like when you look at the baby food cookbooks and you often see those perfect little diced potatoes or the little squares of this and that, it's completely impossible for a 6-month-old to pick up those foods. You would have to do it for them. And when you are picking up foods for your baby and putting it in their mouth, it actually increases the risk of choking. So the notion that smaller is safer is not always true. So we like to look for big, soft foods. Or, on the other hand, really big resistive foods that kind of act like teethers. So one of our favorite, this is not going to go over well with the California audience, but first foods is spare ribs. And you can even take most of the meat off the bone.
Oh, hell yeah.
The reason those are so great for babies is because young babies don't yet have a mental map of their mouth, meaning if there's a little piece of rice in the back of their tongue, their brain hasn't quite made that connection or that map of the mouth to know, like, I'm going to move that piece of rice forward and spit it out or swallow it. So you have to provide a lot of sensory input to the tongue in these early days for the brain to learn where food is and how to move it around, move it to the side for chewing, all that stuff. So the bigger the food, the better. So we love corn on the cob. We love spare ribs, chicken drumsticks. Like, think of the Flintstones days, like anything that,
Totally. I actually, we had a barbecue last Sunday where we burned the Brussels sprouts and
super singed.
Yeah, super singed. And I just cut like a big old piece of pork chop for Finn and just handed it to him, and he just sucked on it for like 30 minutes.
Love it. Like, and he's actually getting some iron and from the juices and all of that. So it can be a really wonderful thing.
They'll get a little bit of flavor from the juices, and then they won't choke because it's so big. They can just hold it and manipulate it almost like a food toy.
Yeah,
exactly.
And
Finn spare ribs.
Finn has no teeth, which I'm a little worried about because he's already 7 months old. And
no. Don't worry.
Not even like an idea of a tooth in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's just going to town gumming on this like piece of meat, which Ned is so happy about.
Oh yeah. I mean, man, I just live in California. I ain't like from California. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I didn't really. So Finn is still breastfed, and so our doctor was saying you really need to introduce iron-rich foods as soon as possible. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, spinach, oatmeal. No, you got to go for the meat. Right?
Yeah.
Finn's first food was steak.
A funny fact for you, spinach actually doesn't have that much iron. The reason we think it does is because the chemist back in the 1800s, when they were analyzing the iron content, made a decimal error in his handwritten notes. And no one recognized the mistake for like 75 years. And then in that time, the cartoon Popeye came out and kind of reinforcing this notion that spinach was really high in iron. But what's also really kind of funny is that spinach contains oxalates, which like inhibit iron absorption. So anyway, it sounds like chicken liver might be up your alley one day.
Yeah, I got chicken liver recently, and I think because
we should do a whole chicken save the giblets.
You know why I got it is because I downloaded the 100 First Foods. And I just went down the list and I just put them in my Whole Foods cart. I was like, tick, 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 tick.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so the highest iron foods are like nut butters for plant-based babies are the best things. Just like mix them into yogurt or applesauce or whatever. Smoothies for toddlers. Nut butters are like the godsend for iron. For omnivorous children, you've got sardines, you've got liver, lamb, red meat, pork, chicken. Iron from meat absorbs in our body better than iron from plants. It's actually two different types of iron. So that's something to consider as well if you have a mostly plant-based baby. For those of you listening.
We have a couple of omnivorous babies.
Yeah, highly omnivorous.
I am mostly plant-based, but Ned is mostly meat-based.
Yeah, kind of like
Super Singer.
I think because of our relationship, I like, don't eat a lot of meat at home. So then I'll like take the special occasions, the opportunities, go a little overboard.
We've had a lot of special occasions recently.
That's true. We do kind of when every day is a party.
But yeah, I mean, Wes's favorite food is probably steak. Just cut into small pieces.
But he doesn't really like chicken though.
He doesn't like chicken. Yeah, it's weird.
He likes steak and salmon.
Yeah.
Doesn't like chicken. Didn't
but
really.
I'm okay with it.
He wasn't super into the pork chop.
But there like sardines. Ned was unpacking our groceries the other day, and he was like, "Ariel, really sardines?" And I was like, "Sorry, they're
Solid
for Finn."
Starts made me do it.
Yeah. Solid Starts
We're
made me
thinking
do
of
it.
making T-shirts or onesies that say "Solid Starts made me do it" because it's been a like hashtag thing that folks have been doing a lot, which is kind of funny. Like people having sardines for the first time in their life as adults, even, right?
Yeah, I've never had sardines except maybe on a pizza.
Maybe on a pizza, yeah. What are some of the most esoteric foods out of that list of 400? I mean, is octopus on there?
Yeah. What's on the on the list?
What might we not be thinking of? Chicken liver is a good one.
Chicken liver's a good one.
Because we definitely routinely
I
throw
have
out the
slept on
giblets
chicken liver
'cause
my entire life. There is absolutely no way that I would eat a chicken liver, but I will make it for my child.
And just so you can get those blood results at the pediatrician's office so well, right? Like the things the lengths will go to. So the database, when it's done, will have every food in the world in it. So from sea cucumbers from Japan
roasted
to
scorpion?
edible tarantulas from the Amazon,
Wow.
right? So we have about 200 plus loaded and live right now, and another 500-600 in the works with our team of nutritionists and dietitians and stuff who review it. Mm-hmm. But I would say the most adventurous for my family that my twins have eaten, and obviously what's adventurous for me might be commonplace for someone else, which is something that this has really opened my eyes to. It's probably edible grasshoppers. So grasshoppers are pretty common in Mexico and other countries. They're dried and roasted and salted and eaten as snacks. And it was the first insect that I ever, bought. And I went to like a gourmet website, and, they were like probably like way too expensive. And they arrived and were like, okay, I'm not going to feed my babies something I have not had myself. Like I have to, there has to be, they're not like test, So I filmed myself eating the grasshopper, and I love watching this video over and over again because I eat it and I'm like, wait, that doesn't taste like a bug. And I'm like, wait, what would a bug taste like? You don't even know. It literally tasted like a grassy potato chip, like a salty, grassy potato chip. But like the psychological barrier of just, sitting down to do it felt really intense for me. But what's crazy is that 80% of the world eats insects on a regular basis. Like we're in the minority on this.
Huh.
Yeah,
that is so funny.
Have done, back in the day, old BuzzFeed videos. We would eat scorpions or other insects. I mean, they were really good. They get, salted up, sear it up, get it nice and spiced, and then you just eat it, and it's like crunch, 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 yum, 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 yum.
We're going to scare all the moms off here.
I know.
Baby Led Weaning is not about insects, people. It's okay. No, but, there's something larger happening, which is around sustainability, right? Like, you look at cricket flour and cricket bars, like, I think that we're starting to see a shift away from meat and animal protein for a number of reasons. If we're going to replace that nutrient in our diet, edible insects, like things like cricket flour and stuff, are actually a really kind of natural evolution of that. So who knows? Maybe 100 years from now, we'll all just be eating bugs.
Hard to say. I mean,
I'm on board.
I could wrap my head around it. But it's okay. So I feel like the scariest thing about baby led weaning is, it at least for me, is the swallowing and just the situation.
I'm always worried they're gonna choke.
I'm worried that he's going to choke. But I know this is something that I did not realize was a job, that there are infant swallowing specialists that you have on your team. Tell me a little bit about why this is not as much of an issue as I think it is.
When I was building the team for Solid Starts, it was so important to me, I think because I'm the type A mom who worries about this kind of stuff, to have the allergist and the MD pediatrician and the swallowing specialist and the feeding therapist and the pediatric dietitians, because no other organization that I know of has pulled that sort of multidisciplinary comprehensive team together for this. And when we're talking about baby-led weaning, which is a departure from what we've always done, that felt really important to me from a trust and credibility perspective. So that's why we have infant swallowing specialists on our team. So the thing is, though, is the likelihood that your child is going to choke is really quite rare. It's kind of, similar to the likelihood your child's going to have an allergy, for example. I mean, it's like 8% of kids are going to have an allergic reaction. So 92% of us won't have to, deal with that. Choking is rare. You'll see statistics like, it's the number one cause of death and things like this. And, for certain age groups that can be true, but those statistics are often including toddlers and 3-year-olds. Well, what do we know about toddlers and 3-year-olds? They are running around. You can't catch them. They grab something off the counter and they bolt. Yeah. So, when we look at choking statistics, for example, we are afraid because the media and everyone else has sort of told us that we should be afraid, right? But those statistics have rarely just sort of isolated the infant. The thing that I hope will make you feel better is that the way an infant's mouth is structured is more tightly compact. They actually don't have as much space here as we do. So things can't really make it that far back to be, super dangerous. And sort of the bigger is better is why what you'll always hear us say. But the other thing is that they have a number of built-in protections. So they've got the lingering tongue thrust. If you've ever touched a 4-month-old's tongue, you'll see it kind of dart forward like a snake. That's a tongue thrust. It literally pushes things forward. If you've ever seen a baby take a too big bite of food or stick their fingers too far back in their mouth, or a teether, right, they'll gag. The gag reflex has your back. It is really easily triggered in babies, and it's much more further forward, the trigger point, on the tongue than it is for an adult. So for you and me to gag, a piece of food would have to get pretty far back in our throat, right, to elicit that kind of retching motion. For an infant, it's going to happen around here. So your baby's going to gag a lot, and they're going to gag for several months, and they may gag at every meal or multiple times in the meal. This is, I hate to say it, but kind of part of learning to eat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. For all of our audio only listeners of this podcast, Jenny only, it was the very center up to her tongue. Imagine the part
so the
where
first third of the tongue
down into.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and you'll often see babies gag more on small particles of food like rice or quinoa or couscous, that kind of thing. Because they're just not able yet to know where that is in the mouth. And it's like, whoa, what is all this going on in my mouth and what do I do with it? So that's why we love these big, almost stick-shaped foods like corn on the cob, chicken drumsticks. A mango pit is my go-to for really worried parents because your child can't bite through the mango pit and it just kind of, they can suck and teeth on it.
Wow. They just suck
But you know what else? The thing that I really, as much as we were talking about adventurous foods and, going kind of whole hog, literally and figuratively, I think it's really important to make the distinction that this is about self-feeding. So it's less important about, the like crazy food that you might be feeding your child in baby led weaning. It's more important to let them self-feed. So you can have a baby self-feed a puree. So if that's the only way you can wrap your mind around, starting to let them kind of have control at the table, put puree in a bowl, a section bowl or something on the table, and let them finger paint. That in and of itself will be a huge step toward raising a happy eater and an eater that actually wants to come back to the table.
Yeah. I mean, we got these like almost like teething spoons for Finn, so that like we'll sit him at the table and kind of give him even mushed up avocado. If maybe I didn't have the time to like slice it or something like that, I'll just stick it in a bowl and just go mush. Give him a little guacamole or something, and then give him a spoon, and he'll just kind of like, play with the spoon, dip the spoon, put it in his mouth, and then chew on it, and then it drops on the floor, and then you pick it up, and then it drops on the floor, and then you pick it up, and it's just, it's just constant. Yeah, because it certainly is. You said kind of wrapping your head around letting your baby self-feed, and we very much were brought up with this idea that purees are the first food. And like that is the safest way to feed your child. And it, it turns out it doesn't have to be. But if that's still something that you want to experiment with. But if you want it to be,
it's okay too. Yeah. I think we have so many methods these days, right? Like exercise methods, diet methods. We're a little over methody. I'm really hoping to kind of break these down and break the barriers down too between the spoon feeding and baby led weaning audiences and the breastfeeding and the formula audiences, because food can just be food, however you want to do it. But the reality is by 8 months old, your child should be self-feeding anyway. So if you want to start with purees, start with purees, but move quickly toward finger food. The problem happens when we see children exclusively spoon-fed for a really prolonged period of time. Like I spoon-fed Charlie until I want to say 14 months old. Like that was the only way he ate for a really long time, because I was just so afraid and I didn't know what I was doing. The amount of information for solids, used to be really small. You would go to your doctor's office and you'd get like a tear off, like a half-page tear off. Like start with 4 tablespoons of rice cereal and 1 fruit and 1 veggie or whatever, and like be on your way. And there are like entire institutions dedicated to breastfeeding and formula composition and all of that. But you eat solid food for a way longer time in your life, and it's also way scarier for the parents. So
exactly.
I'm hoping that we're filling that void.
Even now, I mean, from our doctor, we just got sort of a like, what 4 months. So now so our doctor had us start solids with both our kids at 4 months, and we were like, okay, so how do we do that? Where do we even begin? And they were like, well, you want the iron rich foods. And then they didn't really specify, like, should we be serving them, chunks of food? Should we be serving them purees, anything like that? They were more interested in the allergens. And so
they're like, you gotta hit eggs.
Yeah.
Bam.
So I guess the recommendation right now is to introduce all the big allergens before babies turn 1 or before babies turn 8 months or something like that, so that they are so they have experience with these foods, and I don't really know how that works, but
I think it lowers the chance that they develop allergies.
Because
you're kind of introducing it early and slowly over time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whereas if someone has literally never eaten an egg and then they turn 5 and they have egg salad,
and it's like,
then their body overreacts to it.
Yeah.
I think
we don't exactly know. Yeah, no, you're right, Ned. We don't exactly know why it is. We also don't know why allergies are increasing, because they are. Interestingly, if you were a mom or a dad, like back in like 2000 or so, and you went to the doctor's office, they would have told you to hold off on all allergens until closer to age 3, which is like completely the opposite of today, right? Well, in that time, in the decade or two that passed, in that time when that recommendation was in place, allergies actually increased over 80% in children. So one of the things they realized is they had it totally backwards. But also in that time, what happened is there was a kind of landmark study around peanuts. And the idea was, wait, if kids in West Africa are eating peanuts every day and the peanut allergy rate is really low there, and same thing with Israel and the Bamba puffs, which is really common to feed children early on, and peanut allergy is really low there. Is there something there? Turns out there is. So it doesn't, the evidence doesn't apply to every single food allergen, but for peanuts in particular and eggs and a couple others, there's really strong evidence that you can actually prevent the allergy from developing altogether forever with the early introduction. But I will add, because our allergist would want me to, that you have to keep the allergen in the diet 2 to 3 times a week for 5 years.
Wow.
For it to have
Babies
the
don't
full
even eat that much
So you can't
food.
just be we did salmon and we're never doing salmon again, right?
Right. He tried peanut butter. We did great.
We did it.
Not allergic. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well,
Guess we're gonna have
that's good
up
to
our
know.
chicken liver intake.
I think we're gonna need to just serve in a lot more food.
The mixed nut butters, like Trader Joe's has a mixed nut butter, can be really easy for tree nuts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just get a mixed nut butter that
Hit
has all the
the
common
nuts
nuts
at
in
once.
it. Yeah.
We noticed as adults when we did an elimination diet to try and, check out some things with our bodies. I had never been, in any way reactive towards milk, and cutting out dairy for 30 days and then reintroducing it totally made me that much more reactive
Aware.
to it.
Oh.
Not allergic, but kind of weird stuff happening in my belly. And I was like, wait a second. I've been doing fine with milk this whole time. I just did this randomly for fun. And now I've ruined my milk tolerance by going away from it for a month.
That's interesting.
You're probably just a little
you know,
lactose intolerant. It actually gets worse with age.
Yeah, maybe. But, I'm back on the cream now. So
He's back on the cream.
back on the cream, doing just fine. Built up that tolerance again. No more weird stuff. Iron belly, full of cream.
Oh my gosh. It's actually true. Ned is a dairy fanatic.
I love sorbet as much as the next guy, but
Give me that whipped cream.
give me that ice cream, baby.
Yeah.
So if someone's listening and they're like, this all sounds great, but my toddler is already 2 and already developing signs of picky eating. I mean, how can someone both prevent picky eating as well as kind of course correct if they're already noticing some tensions around feeding time?
Yeah. So first, almost every child goes through a really selective or picky eating phase. And it's, sort of common around age 2 or 18 months to, age 6. They're just wired at that age to be more wary of new things. So something that they might have eaten readily as a 6-month-old suddenly becomes wait, what is that? And why is it that color? And why does it have those seeds all over it? And, it becomes this whole other thing. So, take it in stride as you go through that and know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. My very extreme picky eater, Charlie, last night was smelling ripe peaches in our kitchen. And he was on his way to bed and he goes, "What's that smell? What's that smell?" And I said, "It's the peaches." And he goes, "Can I touch one?" I said, "Of course." He goes over, he touches it, and he's kind of putting it to his nose and smelling it and sniffing it some more. I said, "You could take a bite if you want." And he did, and then he finished the whole peach. It was his first peach ever in his life because he's so picky. So there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Part of it has to do with age, and part of it has to do with the parenting style. So when we talk about preventing picky eating, it's really important to acknowledge the sort of evidence behind how it develops and why. There are certain kids, whether there's sensory processing issues or just other sort of, developmental issues that are going to put them more at risk of picky eating. And no matter what you do, they're going to end up picky. So I want to say that for the parents who are in that boat, because you didn't do anything wrong. You just sometimes end up there. But for the vast majority of typically developing babies, they really don't need to be on a path of picky eating. And why they end up on a path of really picky eating. And when I say picky eating, I mean like refusing dinner repeatedly, only eating certain types of food that are like, puffs or graham crackers or cheddar bunnies or, that kind of thing.
The three main food groups.
Yes, exactly.
Puffs, graham crackers, cheddar bunnies.
Exactly. If you feel stressed coming to the table with your child, there's probably an issue. And that's sort of the litmus test there for me. But when we talk about preventing picky eating, what the research shows, and what I can tell you as a mom who's been through this for 5 years now, is that it really comes down to handing over the reins to the child at the table. So the more controlling you are at the table, whether it's exclusive spoon feeding and not letting them grab the spoon from your hand, whether it's constantly wiping their face because you want to stay really clean and kind of sending that message that food is dirty, whether it's telling them they have to finish their broccoli before they can have dessert. You can imagine like there's all these different ways control can kind of take place at the table. The more controlling a parent is at the table, the more at risk they are of unintentionally raising sort of a picky eater. So, it turns out 6-month-old babies like to be in charge of what they're eating just as much as we do. Like if you imagine someone like coming at you, with the spoon and then coming at you with a washcloth and wiping your face, like babies don't like this experience. So when we try to unravel picky eating, we often first go to how do we give the child control? Okay, we're going to give them more choices at the table. Maybe they were only offered one dish before. Now we're going to give them a choice of 2 proteins in very small amounts. So you just, now they a little bit more, agency in the matter. When we think about preventing picky eating, it's about doing all of the opposite of that. So channel a dinner party vibe, clink your glasses, make it joyful, take your eyes off of their food. Don't count bites. Don't measure ounces. Don't, how much do we have to finish this much of puree? Really try to kind of get out of the way, actually, and let your child lead that experience. Then you'll have the best shot you can at preventing picky eating.
I gotta say right now, it's hard. It is hard to do that. Like I know that in my brain that is what I'm supposed to do. And yet Ned and I are looking at each other because last night at dinner, I told Wes, you need to eat these 3 pieces of broccoli and then you can have like some banana ice cream, which is just cream and banana whipped together.
And then he said, I don't want banana ice cream.
And he left the table.
Charged out the door, the front
you
door.
Lose.
And we started.
Like, do not leave the table without asking to be excused.
This is the thing. A 3-year-old cares more about doing it their way than going to bed hungry. Once you figure out that game, you will see that it's so much easier. This is my best advice for you. You have to fake it. Feign indifference. Act like you don't care. That really gets them going.
Oh, no.
It's so bad. It's so bad because like I know that I'm not supposed to be doing this, and yet like here is my 3-year-old sitting at the table
eating nothing.
He's just sitting there eating nothing, and then he'll like leave the table, and
only the butter.
He literally will pick the butter off of his noodles and just eat the butter, and I'm
suck the butter off the noodles.
And I'm sitting here looking at Ned and being like, this can't be what he's gonna eat tonight,
But
and like,
you know what though? Here's the thing.
Here I am. I've been slaving over this chicken all day.
Let's say he ate the broccoli. The broccoli and he ate the 3 pieces of broccoli and then he got the banana ice cream or whatever. You won the short game. You didn't win the long game, because all those little short game wins, whether you're incentivizing or bribing or pressuring or whatever it is, in any formation feels like pressure to the child. And the moment a child feels pressured, it's going to backfire. So there's a little saying that I'm going to leave you with, which is, the more you pressure your child to eat, the less they're likely to eat. Converse is true. The more you back off and give your child space, the more they're likely to eat. So that holds true across the board. It's pretty universal. You may need to kind of do a little bit of a hard reset with him. And what we often recommend with kids who are just licking the butter off the pasta or whatever it is to have a week where you're going to let him eat anything. So that might be
Popsicles
like, you get to choose
breakfast.
pasta with butter for breakfast, pasta with butter for lunch, pasta, maybe just butter for dinner, whatever it is you want. And you're not going to comment on it. You're not going to notice anything. There's no rules. It's just, letting him find joy again in eating. You're going to offer some other choices as well, because he might get sick of pasta with butter. I'm not sure, but he might. And then when that week...
Impossible.
When that week is up and you've done your hard set, you can go back to a new approach. And what we would recommend is actually starting the meals in a place that was different, like physically different than where he was before, to break the environmental association that happened before. So when we have really severe picky eaters, whether they're 12 months old or 5 years old, we'll often recommend doing a hard reset, like, you want to eat cheddar bunnies all week? Fine, eat cheddar bunnies all week, just to get them eating again and enjoying it and feeling in control. And then change the location of the high chair or the booster chair, or whatever it is. Have a picnic on the floor. Do lunch in the stroller, whatever it is, just to kind of break the association of that, the place that they may associate with pressure. A lot of kids start crying when they're put into the high chair because they're very kind of... like environmentally sensitive in that way. Right. So if you want him to eat more, pressure him less.
Wow. I think this brings us back to the morning popsicle. And now, knowing what we know, what would you say about the morning popsicle that he's so proudly got all by himself?
I have to say I would let him eat it. Like, what's the big deal at the end of the day?
Deal?
When he's in college, are you going to remember
said.
that he got like a popsicle one morning? No, you're not going to care. You don't have to be pure about it. I think particularly in our culture, we're very like nutrition focused. We're very pure, like breakfast is breakfast and this, but does it actually matter to his body, physiologically speaking, whether the popsicle was ingested at 8 a.m. versus 8 p.m.? No, that's a cultural construct. Dessert and that notion is a cultural construct. So, I might say, oh, we're having popsicles this morning. Okay, that wasn't on the menu, but yeah, we could make an exception this morning. But tomorrow we're going to start back with eggs.
That's very smart.
That's very smart.
I mean, certainly better than being like, you put that popsicle away. Which is near what we did.
Yeah, basically.
Ouch. Yeah.
Well, then I'd probably put the popsicles out of reach.
Yeah.
That's a good point too.
That's the issue with that bottom freezer. It is right at toddler height, and he loves opening that thing up and like seeing what's inside.
Put the popsicles in the garage freezer.
Yeah,
they're lock and key.
Freezer.
Yeah,
salmon freezer.
the breast milk freezer.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us today, Jenny Best from Solid Starts. If you're listening and you haven't subscribed yet, hit subscribe. Join the community. We are Baby Steps, the weekly parenting comedy podcast with a dose of realness.
Jenny, where can everybody find you?
Solidstarts.com or Solid Starts on Instagram.
Life's a journey. Take baby steps.